5G mobile edge compute is poised to help modernize military bases into smart bases by wirelessly connecting thousands of on-base IoT devices, including autonomous vehicles and drones and other equipment within the DoD's network infrastructure. I'm Wyatt Cash with Scoop News Group, and here to talk about that today and how the U.S. Army is integrating 5G into its operations are Dr. James Tucker Swindell, Chief of the U.S. Army's Radio Frequency Communications Division, and Lamont Copeland, Managing Director, Federal Solutions Architecture at Verizon. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us and welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
James, let me start with you. Talk a little about how the U.S. Army is starting to introduce and integrate 5G connectivity into the wider ecosystem of military bases and their operations, and what you see as some of the near-term benefits the Army hopes to achieve.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate the inclusion in the interview today. The U.S. Army is taking a good hard look, as well as the Navy, Air Force, and Marines, into what 5G can truly bring to the warfighter. We are certainly monitoring efforts going on by OSD, keeping a thumb on the commercial industry as well to understand what technologies are being brought forward. 5G gives us a connectivity that we just don't have today. It gives us an ability to stream data that would be thought of as only hard drive and run it across the runway because it's simply too big to move otherwise. So when we talk about the wider system of the military, it's really something that could have applicability from a logistics perspective, from an operational perspective. We could look at how 5G can affect the tactical battle space being at the edge, and what we could do to maintain security is always going to be an issue. I'm sure we'll get to that later. But this gives us a mobile capability that we just don't have, and we're excited about it. So we're going to continue to follow what industry is putting forward, what OSD is tracking. Of course, we have S&T efforts that are looking at the capability as well. And it's really going to be a game changer for us. And we truly believe that the connectivity that we can expect from 5G is going to be a revolutionary step for us in connecting our sensors, systems, and soldiers. So when asked the question about how the Army is starting to introduce it, we're leaning forward. We're paying attention to industry. We're tracking what other entities across the joint services are doing. And we're making sure that when we look at our bases and our infrastructure at those bases, we recognize opportunities to incorporate the throughput, the data availability of 5G, and make sure that we are maximizing efficiencies when it comes to how we move data around, not just our bases here, CONUS, but also OCONUS and perhaps in the battlefield of the future.
Well, Lamont, I'd like to get your perspective too. You know, many people think of 5G in terms of delivering large volumes of data faster, but what are some of the other advantages that the military can expect from 5G and mobile edge compute?
Thank you, Wyatt. And just like Dr. Swindell said, I mean, there's a lot of things that the 5G can bring to bear to help to modernize these military bases that we're seeing today. It's going to be a large and difficult upbringing, because what you're going to look through is working through these legacy technologies that are out there, TDM services, antiquated databases, all these different things. And what 5G and the MEC and the mobile edge compute can bring to bear is the quick innovation and quick incorporation of these things into these military bases, regardless of where they're at. As you're seeing in some of what the DoD is doing with a lot of the research and development that they're looking at, like at Joint Base Pearl Harbor, where they're trying to bring up these services and capabilities, it'll bring that technology to bear, bring it in so that they can see how it works, see the capacity it could bring, see the low latency that it can bring there, but then how it can also enable some of the applications and things that they're trying to push to be able to improve the mission outcomes that they're seeing today. So you're going to see, not only will it bring the quick innovation, quick modernization of these bases, but it will also be able to enable that, what we would call the fourth revolution, industrial revolution, where you're bringing AR, VR into place, autonomous vehicles into place, bring all these capabilities, which will help with the tactical edge for the military warfighter, will help with the development of what they're looking for when they have to go through R&R and bringing some of the capabilities into play, but also bring in, just different things which will drive outcomes based off of what the military is looking to do.
Well, and James, back to you. Talk to us a little bit about the security issues that you're having to prepare for in deploying 5G connectivity on top of existing military communication networks.
Oh, thank you. So securing the data is paramount for us. We certainly are very excited to see how 5G has progressed. And as I've told some of my coworkers and reports, being discoverable is a characteristic of all of our phones. We want our phones to be able to walk outside and they pick right up on the tower. Not all things we do in the military we want to be as discoverable. So we need to be careful in how we move this data around the battle space. I'll give you an example, and I'll speak to the Verizon representative's point. When we look at our CONUS and OCONUS base locations, our warehouse sites, we could use 5G to get us away from the antiquated, and we still do have them, tablets and handwritten forms that move material around into a much more ubiquitous and open source capability to pull that tablet out or pull your phone out and track inventory through it with real-time streaming of data, which is amazing. But we have to make sure that that data is fenced. We have to make sure that data is not easily accessible by individuals, CONUS, who may have some negative thoughts on what the military is doing, and especially OCONUS, when we have other actors that may want to know what's at that base. They may want to know the logistics that are going on there. So we do have concerns. We feel that these concerns are achievable in terms of finding a solution to them. And we know that our enterprise may build on the commercial enterprise. We may be able to take a lot of solutions, but we're probably going to have to beef up the security on those because type 1 encryption is important to us. And we have to make sure that's maintained, even with our legacy systems.
Well, Lamont, back to you. How are providers like Verizon helping the military address some of those concerns and specifically around discovery, but also other security issues?
Yeah, no, and thank you for that question. And these networks are secure, and they, these are the same type of networks that we're providing to a lot of our government officials and facilities. But we're also going to make sure that they're secure for our consumer as well. So we make sure security is paramount for how we're protecting everything from our, the financial networks to our government facilities. But what we want to work with our government personnel is to ensure that we're providing that extra layer of security on top of that. And what you're looking at is how do we then bring in that zero trust architecture? How do we make sure that, on top of what we're already providing from a secure connectivity piece, there's additional things which are how we're layering on, that trust of the applications, the trust of the data movement, the trust of the users that are coming into here. Just like Dr. Swindell said, with you're going to have these facilities where you're going to work inside of these logistics areas where there's somebody working on a warfighter standpoint. They're trying to work through and fix a plane, and they need to pull up schematics, pull up different information to be able to work through these things. We don't want to have them to stop doing that work and having to go over to a file cabinet and pull out the information from there. This is where the edge computing and the 5G come into play, because now they're able to digitally work in this environment, pull the schematics up, use different technologies like digital twinning to be able to then start working through and doing these things. But we want to make sure that we're providing that secure environment to do that. And that's bringing in, the zero trust architecture. We can do this in building in these bubbles where you're bringing that 5G and edge and building that private instance of a 5G communications bubble for them to be able to work in, use that technology, but then have that still seamlessly work with the public network and have that same security so that when you're moving, you can move between different parts of the base and have these different secure bubbles, still have that same connected communications path, or even if they're moving from base to base. So we're going to always work with our government officials to make sure that, one, we understand their security postures, and then we also then bring in that zero trust to layer and continue to layer the security elements into play on the 5G and the edge compute to ensure that we're protecting all the data that is there today.
Well, James, looking forward a little bit, talk about some of the operational and tactical advantages that you see 5G bringing to military bases and into the battle space.
Thank you for that question. 5G has a lot of promise behind it in terms of high-speed data connectivity. It really helps to fill our ISR needs. We've got a lot of great sensing capability out there that can produce enormous amounts of data, which are quite valuable, but we need to move them around the battle space. When we dealt with our non-near-peer threats over the past couple of years, we had some pretty ingenious ways of moving data around, but some of that included grab a hard drive and run across the Air Force, the landing pad with it. Where we see 5G really helping us with reducing latency, giving us increased speed, improved reliability of data transfer, that's going to really change the game for us because it allows us to take action on data sooner. And that's what the name of the game is. Speed is going to be life in the future fight. It's very important to mention that the RF spectrum right now, it's very crowded. It's very complicated. And the 5G frequencies that we're tracking, sub-6 all the way up into the millimeter wave frequencies, will have to be utilized by the Army because the spectrum, anything below, say, 40 or so, is getting very crowded. So we want to be able to make sure all of our efforts, whether it's logistics, tactical, intelligence-based, that can benefit from the 5G spectrum usage do. This can lower the amount of hardware we need in the field. I may not need to have the racks and racks of hard drives and servers if I'm connected to the cloud. If I have a steady and secure connection, I don't have to overload the vehicles and the soldiers with additional equipment, and maybe I can save some time, some money, so as we like to call it, some size, weight, and power. There are other advantages to 5G. We talk about general transport. I have a lot of legacy systems in the Army, radios that have been around before I was even born. I can still use those radios, but consider my transport mechanism to be on the 5G backbone. I can even embed the crypto and the capability I need to remain secure, but send the signal over a 5G backbone. There are a lot of options out there that 5G brings to the table. So we want to make sure we capitalize on each and every one of them. So when we talk about operational and tactical advantages, I would just reiterate that across the joint force, not just Army, the speed and the ease of access to data and the reliability of moving that data great distances over the network, that's going to be a game changer for us. And we're excited to lean forward into it.
A lot of possibilities there. Thank you for illustrating those. Lamont, just as we wrap up here, just briefly, given the military's unique global requirements and Verizon's global reach, what else should they keep in mind to take full advantage of 5G and MEC?
Yeah, and one of the great things is we've been doing a lot of these partnerships with the government on trying to understand how do you leverage the 5G and MEC both publicly and privately across the globe itself. And the spectrum is, just like Dr. Swindell, it's getting very crowded. There's a lot of it that's out there, but there's a lot of it that's being leveraged and utilized. So the question is how do we then take these technologies and move them across, if we're into a battlefield sense or just into another facility in overseas. And a lot of that is working with us to understand what that outcomes that you want to drive to so that then we can then build these tactical bubbles, like we were just talking about it previously, about how we can then build a private tactical bubble, which is secure, using this spectrum, whether it's this licensed or unlicensed spectrum or something that we own, or and how do we bring all that technology to bear to be able to leverage a spectrum that's available there today, and then have it so that it can grow, because the military force is not just going to be one or two people that are going to be out there. It could be in that facility, so you can still leverage that same technology. But then how do I then take that, still have that innovation in those technologies, and then grow it from two people to maybe then a small battalion, and then knowing that they still have all the innovation, all the speed, all the edge computing that's necessary to be able to support that mission set that day, and then to make sure that's in a secured environment, and then that they're able to then see that seamless movement that they're necessary to be able to continue that mission, so that they're not focused on, will my technology be there? Will that be available to me? But really, okay, I now have what I need, so I can start making decisions and really focus on what that outcome I'm looking for versus what the technology is going to be able to deliver and can be available for me.
Absolutely. And James, in our final minute, can you comment on the Army's timetable for rolling out 5G smart base capabilities?
Sure. I would actually phrase that in terms of the timetable being ongoing. We are not going to just do a effort between 23, 24, 25 and stop. Rolling out these smart bases with 5G, I think, is going to be a continual effort for the Army. And I would even add to smart bases and say that we're going to be rolling out 5G into our tactical and operational forces, likely for years and years to come. We know that 5G will morph into 6G, and eventually someone will probably have a 7G, but it's the throughput. It's the ability to have data at the speed of need that we're going to be pushing. So there are efforts ongoing right now within the Army to look at where we'll be in 2 to 3 years, to look at where we'll be within 5 to 7 years. The smart base concept is very focused right now on the logistics and individual sites across the United States for our Army bases. However, these technologies will certainly be applicable for years to come, not only at these military bases, but at some of our forward operating posts, some of our locations overseas, operating either through or bringing our own 5G capability to bear. So when we talk about the timeline, I say the timeline started years ago, It's ongoing, and we're going to continue to press forward to maintain the connectivity, security, and availability of data for our soldiers.
Well, Dr. James Swindell and Lamont Copeland, thank you so much for taking a few minutes to join us today and share some of your insights on the implementation of 5G across the military. So thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Have a great day.